Back, y'all. So for this week's refresher into Adobe Illustrator as we get into Graphic Design 2, we have 3 worksheets: the Pathfinder worksheet, the Shape Tool worksheet, and the Pen Tool worksheet, each kind of covering 3 massive tools that we use as we draw inside of Illustrator. So let's, as a refresher, remind ourselves how to kind of do each one. So for each of these videos, it's going to be focused on each of the worksheets. This one's going to focus on the Pathfinder. So first things first, as you open this AI file in Adobe Illustrator, we want to go to Window at the very top of the screen and go to Workspace and make sure that we are clicked on Essentials Classic. Sometimes it's on Essentials, sometimes it's on whatever you used last if you were on Painting. So you want to make sure that it's on Essentials Classic. That'll give you access to your options bar up here at the top. That'll give you access to the same natural flow you've been accustomed to during Computer Graphics 1 in previous semesters. Second, we want to go to the window and go look for Pathfinder, right? So all of these are windows that we can have open or panels that we can have open. And so Pathfinder will pop up once I click it, right? And you'll see that it matches exactly with what we see on this worksheet that we want to follow along with. The next step, I usually recommend zooming in, so Command plus at least a couple times. You can pan by holding your space bar. It turns your mouse icon into a hand, so you can pan around and view your page. Imagine basically putting your paper up to your eyes and then just kind of moving it around side to side as you're looking at it. So we want to be close to it. Next, we want to make sure we have our selection tool, the black arrow right here clicked on, so we have that active as our tool. We can select both of these shapes by either holding Shift and clicking each, or we can do a box selection by selecting both by dragging a box to select anything inside of that box. So these 2 shapes as an example. Okay. Once you have those 2 selected, you can see that for this column of blue for results, we want to make sure to click whatever is circled for that specific problem, right? So for this one, we're going to click that first one, which if you look is called Unite. So we are uniting these 2 shapes. If we click it, you can see that it unites them as one single shape. It takes both of those individual shapes and unites them together as one singular blob, right? For the second one, for outlines, we need to make a copy of this guy, right? And to make a copy of this guy, we're going to hold Alt or Option on your keyboard. If you look down, whether you're on a Mac or PC, you should see Alt or Option, either one. When I hold down Alt or Option, notice that my icon for my mouse turns into a double arrow. That means I can click and drag a copy of my guy here over to the outlines. And then I can let go of the Alt Option key, right? So that gives me a copy of this. And so next, right, for our outlines panel right here, we want to make sure to click on the outlines button for Pathfinder right here, right? So when I do outline, it literally gives me the outline of the shape that I've created from results. If I click off of it, we can see the 2 that are left, both results and outline. So if I keep going down the list, it's follow along with basically each single problem, right? So if I click and drag a selection, I can select both of these shapes again, and this time I'm doing minus front, right? So if we look, minus front is going to remove, cutting through, it's going to minus, it's going to divide and kind of take away whatever is in front. So the star was in front of the circle, which means we're essentially almost like creating a cookie cutter. We're using that star to cut out what's inside of this shape. So if I were to click off of it and try to click in the middle where the star was, there's nothing because it's a hole, right? The only things that exist now are these shapes on the end. So just like we did here, we want to have this selected, right? And then we want to make a copy, so Alt Option, and we can drag over to outlines. If you ever want to keep it aligned, right, notice that like if I only hold Alt Option, I can move this anywhere. If I want to keep it aligned, I can hold Shift, and that'll keep it horizontally aligned or vertically aligned, moving in a straight path, so I can just drag it over. Okay, so just like we did for the first one, we want to create outlines for this newly created shape, which means we need to click on this button on our Pathfinder panel. So if we click on outline, that'll give us the outlines here for what we have created. Okay, and then you just keep on going down the list exactly like you did for these past 2, right? So the first 2 pages, right, are pretty straightforward, right? They're pretty much doing the first action under shape modes, and the second action usually typically with the outlines And then when you get to the second page, doing the Pathfinders and then doing also the outlines for that last one there as well. For the third page, you're taking what you've done here and you are now having to critically think of how can you create these shapes, right? So looking at all of them, you see the outlines of different shapes that you would need for these first four. I give you up front, hey look, we're going to use the circle tool, the ellipse tool, to be able to draw this football. I need to draw two circles. And so remember, to draw a circle or a square, I need to hold shift whenever I'm drawing out a shape. If I don't hold shift, I'm going to get an oval or an ellipse. So if I draw out this circle, we can get it right here. If you ever encounter where there's not a fill and you're like, oh crap, I clicked off of it, right? Because it's only got a stroke. Remember, Illustrator operates with a fill and a stroke. So we need to maybe turn on the fill so we can see it, so that we can then go and place it over top. Remember, we can make a copy by holding Alt Option, right? And then dragging this over. So if we look at it, this football is created by the intersection, right, of these two circles. Right, you can kind of see that. So if we look over at the shape modes, we can kind of think through, all right, cool, I probably want to use the intersect shape mode to get that to be that shape. Now obviously that's not the same color of the football, and so if we need to change that to be that brown, the easiest way we can do that is if we go over here while having this object selected, we can use the eyedropper tool, right, to select the color we want to choose and steal from. So this brown right here, because this already is selected, if I click on this brown, it's going to apply that brown to my shape that I have there. And then I can move it over and we have our football, right? All of these pretty much are the same thing. You're trying to figure out which shape modes do I need to use. Clouds, right? We can pretty much assume that we're probably using Unite. For this heart, we can probably assume that we're making a square, two circles, and using Unite. And then for this moon, right, you might want to think about, all right, cool, out of these two circles, it's not going to be intersect, right, because that would only leave us with this intersection right here. We might want to possibly, if we have this circle on top, think about using minus front to take away this shape of the circle, leaving us with a crescent moon. For these last four, I'm going to leave those to you, right, because there's no key there, no pun intended. So I want you to kind of walk through and figure out what you need to do for those, which combination of shape modes you might need to do to create these four shapes. But that is the Pathfinder worksheets. Next video up will be the shape tool, and then the video after that, third video, will be the pen tool refresher.